too. That goes out. Okay. Should I start? Should we wait for Shlomi to come? Should we wait for him? Okay. Good evening. So, thank you very much for welcoming me into Lativ. Before I start, I want to thank Rabbi for giving me the opportunity to come to Hungary the second time. This is the first time here. I haven't learned the name of the place yet. By the time I leave, I will know it. Good. Welcome. I want to start out telling you a little bit about me, because it's going to help you understand why I say what I say. It's not going to be 100% clear why I say it, so if you have questions, feel free to ask. But I'll give you a little bit of my background. So I was born in Israel in 1970, so it makes me 46. So you don't have to do the math. Really, he doesn't really look 46. I am 46. And my parents emigrated, left, yardu, whatever correct verb you want to use. They left Israel, they came to the United States, and I lived in LA from the age of about 11 to until I was done with my bachelor's, which was in 1995, 94. I grew up in a typical Israeli secular family, so I didn't grow up religious. Went to a public school, public middle school, public high school, did all the sort of things that American teenagers do, for good and for bad. And I went to college. I went to a community college, which is not for really good students. It's for students who don't really do so well. And then I transferred to another university, and I've got my bachelor's in political science. Not because I loved political science, it's because I had more units in political science than in any other department. So I said, fine, we'll finish political science and we'll see what happens. Then I started getting interested. I was interested in Jewish texts. It started out with poetry, then moved to different texts, and I decided I wanted to study it. And so I entered UCLA in their graduate school, and I started studying medieval Jewish texts. And I was told that I needed to learn a lot of different languages. I needed to learn Greek, I needed to learn Aramaic, I needed to learn Arabic. And so I started taking all sorts of languages to get the skills to be able to learn. And then I went from UCLA, I went semester to Berkeley, and then from Berkeley I ended up at NYU, New York University, and that's where I received my master's and PhD. And then I met my wife. Then I got a job in Nebraska. I don't know if you know where Nebraska is, but if you Google it, you will see it's in the center of the United States, both north, south, east, and west. It's right in the middle. And there's a university there, and I was the Jewish Federation of Omaha professor of Judaic Studies. I came to a department of philosophy and religion, and I taught all of the world religions, and I taught also philosophy, Islamic studies. I taught whatever really I wanted. Film studies, I got into all sorts of very interesting things. And when we came to Nebraska, my wife and I started a process of becoming religious. And that sort of took a fairly long time. But in the end, after 13 years in Nebraska, we decided that because of our kids, we needed to go somewhere where there's Jewish schools. And we decided to try Israel. We have two sets of twins. We have 12-year-old twins, and we have 9-year-old twins. So we have 3 boys and a girl. So we moved to Israel, to a city called Rehovot, which is even hotter than here. It's very, very hot there. And I have a job, I received a job in Or Sameach, which is a yeshiva in Jerusalem, where I teach usually Jewish philosophy, Jewish thought. And I travel around the United States and Canada, and also now Hungary, talking about the sort of things that I'm interested in. So that's sort of the background of where I'm coming from. Questions, comments, feedback? Everything clear? Anybody needs anything? No? Good. So we keep going. What?
I was going to ask about the two sets of twins, but it's not the topic now.
It's good. It's always a topic. I love talking about my kids. Okay, we can talk about it later. And the talk tonight is something that I'm dealing with for a long time. And I think that every Jewish person thinks about this. The title is, Are Western Values Compatible with Jewish Values? That is, we live in a world, whether it's Israel, whether the United States, Canada, I don't know how much in Hungary, but from what I could see, it seems to be a Western country. It's not, might not be identical to Western Europe, to France and Germany and England, but it seems to me from an outsider's perspective that it's essentially a Western country. And the question is, how do we maintain our cultural, religious identity, living in a society that has a value system of its own? And the question is, does the value system fit with what we know of Judaism, or it doesn't fit? And if it doesn't fit, then what do we do? And that's what we're going to sort of talk about for the next hour or so. So there's a basic rule speaking to groups. I don't know if you know this, when you get trained as a speaker. 26.8% of the audience will fall asleep during the talk. Right, so look around. So there's about 26%, I don't know how much 26% is, but maybe about 8 people. 8 of you are going to fall asleep. And what you're going to remember is my question, which is what? Are Western values compatible with Jewish values? But you're not going to remember the answer, right? So then you're going to wake up when there's clapping, right? And yeah, you clap along, and people will ask you, so what did you think? It was very good, it was very good. So I don't want anyone to be embarrassed. I don't want anybody to feel that they don't know what, I'm going to give you the answer also. Right now, so if you fall asleep, you're okay. Right? So the answer is this. Are Jewish values compatible with Western values? The answer is yes and no. That's the answer. Good night. You don't have to stay awake, you can fall asleep, and I'll continue. I'll speak to the camera. Okay. What are we talking about? Let's define our terms. So when we're talking about groups of values, values are principles or standards of behavior. That is, we have sort of a set of ideas or concepts or principles that we say we're going to live our life according to these rules. Now, that's clear what values are. We don't have to get into a sort of philosophical debate what they are. We could, but that's a different talk. The question is, what is the West? What is the West? What are Western values? That's a much bigger problem. Because there's lots and lots of research on how we define what the West is. Do we use a geographic area? Do we use a cultural? But in a sense, I'm going to use it as the heritage starting with Greeks and the Romans, going through medieval Europe, ending up with the thinkers of England and France up to the Industrial Revolution, then crossing over to the United States, the founding of America, and then sort of the mixture of all of those values together. That's what I consider Western values. To what extent do you share in those values? You're going to have to decide as I speak. Because I can't define for you, I don't know Hungary well enough to be able to tell you, these are your values and it fits to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, no, 8, no, 9. I don't know, you're going to have to decide. What are Jewish values? Well, Jewish values are much easier to define, because what we're going to look at are the values or the principles that we find in classical Jewish sources. We're looking at the Tanakh, we're looking at rabbinic literature, right, which is Talmud, Mishnah, Talmud, Midrash, and the commentaries. That's a fairly large amount of material to cover, but I think it's doable. We're not going to do it tonight. I'm going to sort of point out to you how I see things with regard to Judaism. Okay, now, I'm going to give you a list of, there was a few studies done about what are Western values. I'm going to read the list, and just by show of hands, if you think it is a Western value, raise your hand. Okay? That's all. So all you're going to do is raise and not raise, raise and not. Or you could just be, if you're asleep, just go like that. It'll be fine. Okay. Lives in space. That is, space, the environment in which they live, is very important. Value activity. Okay. Assertive.
Space is important, sorry.
Good, yeah. I'm awake. Got it. Assertive. Diligent. Seeks change. Lives with nature. Want to know how things work. Freedom of speech. Right? That's a big, big one. Strive for articulation. We want to be able to articulate ideas. Love first, then marry. Right? Very, very. If you watch movies that are done, it doesn't matter where, love first, then marry. Is that a Jewish value?
Yes.
Yes? Love first and then marry?
No.
Okay. Read Kuntras Chesed. Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler. אני אמרתי, בתרבות מערב זה קודם אוהבים ואז מתחתנים. אני אמרתי, זה דומה ביהדות, אז אמרו לי כן. No, that's not it. Okay. Love is vocal. That is, if you love somebody, you express it. Right? Focus on self-assertiveness. Attempt to get more. That is the idea in the West, you always want more. Whatever you have, you want more. More of what? More trouble. It doesn't matter. I just want more. The ideal in Western values is to be successful. So how do we define a successful man? A man that can provide his wife all the things that she wants. And how do we consider a woman successful? That she finds that kind of husband. Right? That's success in the West. Honor achievement. And as we respect people who achieve something in their life. Wealth and poverty depend on how hard you work. It's a very, very big idea in Calvinist perspective, which is a Protestant Christian movement. Says that if you are poor, it means you're lazy. So that's what the religion sort of spells this out, and it is in the core of American values. They cherish vitality of youth, and retiring, we retire to enjoy the rewards of our work. That's essentially one of the major studies that was done. There's another study, which that's what I'm going to base on, which is I'm going to mention 10 things and then 11 things, and we're going to go into one by one and see how it fits with Judaism or doesn't fit with Judaism. Number one value that people in the West have, and this is going to be probably more heavily centered on Americans or English speakers, but I think it's also something that you find in other cultures in the West: individualism and freedom. Okay, that's a major, major component of Western values. 2, change. Change is considered good, and it leads to development, improvement, and progress. Right? Change is something that we strive for. We want to have change in the West. Any change is considered a development, it's better, and we're moving forward. Time. Time is one of the most important concepts in Western life. In English, we say that time is kept, filled, saved, lost, wasted, and killed. That is, all these verbs are applied to the word time. More, for example, in terms of the Americans, tend to be more concerned with getting things done than having relationships with people. Because it's much more important to get things done on time than to have friends and hang out and being with friends. 4, equality and fairness. Right? Of those people who live in the West and believe in God, they believe that God created every human being equal. There's a very important cornerstone in Western philosophy. It sounds old, right? Because the Greeks talk about that everyone is equal. But that only meant Greek males who owned land. Not women, not slaves, not this, not that, not that. But that's sort of also the history of America. When America was founded, the only people that had the right to vote were white males, landowners. And there was a question, are Jews white male landowners? And they said yes. But they didn't say yes to women or African Americans or blacks. Women much later, after World War I, they were considered to be white males that can own land. So we'll give them the right to vote. And the same thing happened much later. So, personal control over the environment. What does this mean? In the West, people don't believe in fate. That is, life is determined. No matter what you do, there's a plan for you, and you can do whatever you want, but your life is essentially determined by another force. In the West, they reject that. They believe that they have personal control over what happens. If I work hard, I will succeed. That's not always true, but that's the belief, that's the value. Number 6, self-help and initiative. The society values people who made it on their own. If you take the English language, it has more than 100 words with the word self in it. Self-confidence, self-conscious, self-contented, self-control, self-criticism, self-deception, self-defeating, self-denial, self-discipline, self-esteem, self-expression, self-importance, self-improvement, self-interest, self-reliance, self-respect, self-restraint, self-sacrifice. There are more than 100 words with the word self built into the word. You can see how important that is. Every language has certain things that are very important to it. In Hebrew, for example, there are, I think, 7 words for thorns. You guys know what thorns are? You know, in the desert, they have these plants that are very dry. 7 words for them. Because they used to go with sheep in the desert. It was very important to know what type of thorn it is. Also, there's lots and lots of words for hills in Hebrew. Because when you're walking with sheep, you have to know which hill is you live on. Because it can be, is it this hill? Is it that hill? So I took them 40 years to figure out how to get from Egypt to Canaan. But that's not what happened. You'll find out on Shabbos why we spent 40 years in the desert. Okay. Competition and free enterprise. The value says that competition brings the best from people. When there's an opportunity that rules that everybody can compete with one another, that brings people at their best. And if you want a society to be at its best, just let people fight it out. Not fight physically, but at least have competition. If you make it fair competition, that's going to make people be their best. And a lot of other societies disagree with that. I mean, Eastern philosophy is completely different than this. I have to see if Judaism agrees with this or not. 8. Materialism. What does this mean? So in America, for example, people give high priority to obtaining, maintaining, and protecting their stuff. People like their stuff, and they want more stuff to like, right? When a brand new iPhone comes out, everybody lines up. For what? What's the difference? This one says 6 on it, this one says 7 on it. There's no difference between them. But you need this, you can't live without it. So they value new things and they value innovative things, which means that they value and collect more material objects than most people would ever dream of owning. I mean, the amount of stuff that people in the West own is unprecedented in human history. Just think about whenever you move an apartment, you find out how much stuff you have, and you don't know what to do with it. Like, how do I get all this stuff? I have 90 boxes of books. And that means it's only half of my library, because the other half I sold. There's 90 boxes of books. And yes, I need every single one. I do. I fight my wife for them. Okay, so it means that we give higher priority to obtaining, maintaining, and protecting our stuff. Because it's so important to us, it affects our interpersonal relationships. That is, the relationships that we have with other human beings are negatively affected by our materialism, the value of stuff. Okay. Number 9, future-oriented. What does this mean? It means that we value the future and its improvements. We are sure that the future will bring a better world, and we devalue the past. We look at the past as being worse. There is a concept of nostalgia. Nostalgia is that we always think that, 20 years ago, life was so great. You know, every child had a puppy and used to play and had run around. But that's not true, because I was around 20 years ago, and it wasn't that easy. But there is a sense of nostalgia, but the point is that we believe that the future is going to be better. It's going to bring us wonderful new stuff that we actually need. 10. This is action/work orientation. What does this mean? I don't know if you've ever heard of this phrase. When there's an emergency, sometimes you see this in the movies. There's an emergency, a woman is giving birth or something, and it's like, what do we do? Somebody says, I don't know, do something. What do you mean, do something? It's a Western value that you have to do something. You do know what to do, you don't know what to do, just do something. Right? There's a famous company, I don't want to say the name because you're recording me. Their motto is, just do it. Do what? But that is an expression of Western value. Just do it. It's more important to do than not to do. It's an aspect of Western value system. By the way, do you know what the Greek name means of this company? It means victory. That's what the word in Greek means, victory. Okay. So, people in the West plan their days. Like, on this hour I'm doing this hour doing that, I'm going on vacation in 2 weeks, There's no spontaneity because everything is sort of, you're working, you've got goals, you gotta keep going, you got this pressure, That whole idea is that they have to schedule time for relaxation. Like, I have a massage at 4 o'clock. So at 4 to 5, I'm relaxing. 6 o'clock, I'm back home. I gotta pick up the kids, I gotta take them over here, I gotta go over here, go there. That is, you have to actually schedule everything. Because work and scheduling is something that people value. And that's where we get the concept of no-nonsense workaholic, right? That you see that in Western culture, in literature, in movies, and so on. Because it is a reflection of Western values. Last one, and I don't know if that's the case here in this country. I haven't been here long enough, but when I got out of the airport, I have a sense of what it's like. It's called informality. That people dress and greet and address one another very informal. Would you agree in Hungary people are informal? Yeah? Okay. So those are the 11 things. To what extent are those you see that your culture fits into that model? It doesn't have to be 100%. Anybody? Anyone, please.
Yes.
Yes. In what extent does this fit?
I think it fits like mostly.
Okay.
This belief in continuous self-improvement and overcoming difficulties. I think this is not so much strong.
Okay.
I think people still see here themselves as being bound to some position in the society, and it's very difficult to get out of it.
Okay.
So there's no self-made man, say.
Okay.
But most of the others are
would fit.
Describing
Okay.
Hungarian
Good.
status.
Good. Yes.
Just an example, when Hungary became, after the socialism, and the American companies came to Hungary, and they tried the American kind of marketing, that to sell that you will feel better and you will feel good, and it didn't work. They needed to focus on the problems. That's what Hungarians are. They love to speak about their problems.
The problem.
And
So they're more Jewish. Hungarians are much more Jewish because that's how Jews talk. Oh, yeah, broke. I have this problem. I have this problem. Okay.
That's generalization, but
Yeah.
it fits.
Okay. Okay. Good. Anybody else from that side? Because that side is asleep. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is take one by one until we run out of time and go through seeing if it fits with Judaism or not. Okay? So the first one was individualism. So individualism is something that developed partly due to the history of America. Right? In America, when they talk about individualism, I don't know if you know, that America essentially started as a very narrow strip of land of 13 colonies, and then once you crossed the mountains, there was just nothing. I mean, that's what they said. There were people living there called Native Americans, but they weren't considered human beings for them. It meant once you crossed the mountains, there was just you and the world. There's nothing to stop you. And it created a certain ideal that you have a man getting on a horse and just riding out and deciding for himself whatever he wanted to do. It's not only an American value, we see it also in classical Greek and Roman literature, particularly in Roman literature in the early Republic period, and also in the writings of Hobbes and Locke. And we talk about the idea of self-fulfillment and self-reliance. That is, I am not going to depend on anybody. I am going to do it myself. Something breaks, I'll go to the store, I'll buy, I'll do whatever I can do. Anything that I can do, I will do myself. Now, today, in order to succeed, a person must be strong, must be independent, just like the lonely cowboy. Right? I don't know if you've read, let's say, Steve Jobs. Right? Do you know who Steve Jobs is?
Yes.
So Steve Jobs is the founder of Apple, and he was abandoned by his father, and he grew up sort of and had a rough start. And you read his biography, it's essentially this sort of, he was on his own and had this, but he made it, he did it himself, he fought this and it was this. Same thing with Bill Gates. It is very interesting, because that wasn't the model to take people that we call geeks or nerds, that is people who were sitting in a computer, who were not considered heroes. But now that the model of an independent, strong-willed person also turned to the computer programming, which was, not the image. Because the image was the football player, the baseball player. When you're standing there with a stick and a ball is coming at you at 100 miles an hour, You have to be very brave, right? Because you're going to have to hit it, or you're not going to make it. So a person was, or let's put it this way, individualism would mean that we express it by making decisions that benefit us. That's what individualism means. I'm an individual, I get to decide what is good for me and how I will live my life. That's what it means. Now, there are positive things about it, because it means that they value their own time. The people they take responsibility seriously. They understand that they need to balance between different priorities, because there's lots of different things. But this sense of individualism, that this is my life and I will do something with it, brings about very positive things. So it's not so negative. But now, let's look at Judaism. Do you think Judaism agrees with this aspect or not?
It's very difficult to say it agrees with it or it doesn't agree with it. I think it's not alien to Judaism either.
It's not alien. So it agrees to some extent. I'm simplifying it because, I just want to see, do they fit? Can they work together? Or are they sort of diametrically opposed?
But I'm sorry that I want to be like the defender of the Western, the advocate of the devil. But even in the Western society, there is also a strong sense of communality, which is important to people. So it's not just being alone.
Well, first we're we're pinpointing one value at a time. I'm not saying that individualism therefore means there's no community. But it is a community that is formed voluntarily. I decide whether I'm going to be part of this community or not. It is not imposed on me. That is at the core of individualism. You're right, there are communities, but the communities are voluntary. They're not something that is sort of imposed on me from the outside. So even at that, in the West, it's something that's voluntary. Okay, so I would bring up the Rambam, right? Maimonides. Do everybody know who Maimonides is? Yeah? You know why he's called Maimonides? Because there's Maimonides, there's your Maimonides, there's his Maimonides. Everybody has a different expression of what he says. So the Rambam, he was born in Spain in Cordoba 1135. He died in Egypt in 1204. He wrote a book toward the end of his life called Guide of the Perplexed, Dalalat al-Ha'irin in Arabic, Moreh Nevuchim in Hebrew. He wrote it originally in Arabic, but it's Arabic in Hebrew letters. Okay, it's called Judeo-Arabic. I don't know if you've ever seen Yiddish. Yiddish is essentially medieval German and Hebrew letters. So the Jews in Arab lands would write Arabic, but it's Hebrew letters. So you can read it. If I give you a book, if you can read Hebrew, you can read medieval Arabic. You won't know what it says. It's going to sound funny Hebrew. But essentially, it's the same letters that we read in your prayer book. In that book, he tells us the importance of emulating God. That a Jew should live his life and do whatever God did, you should do. And it's a Gemara, right? God fed the hungry, you feed the hungry. God clothed the people that didn't have clothes, then you clothe them. He healed the sick, you do what you can as if you need to emulate, copy what God does. But he says something very interesting. God is a self-sufficient, independent being. He does not need any help. He is not dependent on anybody else. And I want to suggest that that's the idea for the Rambam for the person. A person should emulate God even to that level that he does not need anybody else. That he is going to build himself and make himself the man he needs to be on his own. So this part, I think, agrees with individualism. Now we're going to go to the other side, the flip side. Today we express individualism with freedom and relativism. Okay? We can say that this is a bit reductionist. I'm making it very simple. But I think at the core of Western values, these concepts are present. And what is relativism? And freedom, what do I mean by this? It means that a man is the measure of all things. Pythagoras. I get to decide the value of everything. I was speaking to a young lady who asked me, what's the difference between you, as a religious Jew, to a non-religious person? I said, the difference is very, very small. It's very, very tiny. You believe, because she said she doesn't believe in anything. I said, you believe this is your life, and you're entitled to do with your life whatever you want. I believe my life belongs to God, and I have to do whatever He wants. That's the difference. There is no other difference. So, but then you look at me and you look at her and say, wait a second, but there, you guys don't look anywhere near one another. That's true. Because once you apply that difference to every decision you make every day, right? So even if the angle is 1 degree different, over every decision that you make, we come farther and farther and farther and farther apart. But really the difference between a religious person and a non-religious person is very, very small. We just have an argument whether this is my life or this is his life. If my life is a gift, then I have to live my life according to the giver. If my life is mine, thanks to the God of chance and evolution and all those other wonderful theories, then I get to do with it whatever I want. If I want to put, all sorts of things on my face, and then fine, it's my life, I can do with it whatever I want. That, I think, Judaism opposes. Judaism starts at the core with there is an absolute right and wrong. It is found in the Torah. God has given us an amazing, amazing tool, right? The mind, the body, the soul, the neshama, with which to live in this world. And we have a duty. God wants us to do something. What does He want us to do? I would say, in a simplistic form, He wants us to do either of two things. One, don't ruin this world any more than it's already ruined. That is, don't make things worse. That's one. But if you can, make this place a better place. That's the responsibility that we have. All of the mitzvot, all of the things that we're trying to do, is really to make this world a better place. We understand that we need to use this world in order to live. We need water, we need food, we need clothing. We're going to take resources from this world. But we need to give as much as we're taking. But Judaism says, try to do even better than that. Get to a point, to the balance, that you are giving this world more than you are taking. And I think you have people in your community that are giving to this world, giving to you, to the community, more than they're taking. You find that in Jewish history, throughout Jewish history, of individuals that gave a lot more than they took. And I think that really is the goal. And so I think on some level, individualism, Judaism values, as an aspect of responsibility and an aspect of understanding the importance of a human being. But on the other hand, the flip side is that we have a rejection of individualism when it comes to moral relativism, and that this is my life and I get to do with it whatever I want. The next value that we spoke about is change. And how do we look at change from a Jewish perspective? And really there's two sides to this coin. On the one hand, Torah is about education. You cannot have a system of education without believing in change. Change means that you can take a person, right, and with the correct educational framework, he can be better. She can be better. That means change. So I think in a sense that Judaism does value change, that change could be good. It just depends on what you're changing to, right? If maybe, Rav Keleti would invite me again here and I came with a mohawk, earrings, and a tattoo, you'd say, oh, that's a bad change, Rabbi. I don't know what happened since last time you were here. We need to talk about this, right? So you can have change go either way. But Judaism, by stressing the importance of education, of Torah education, it tells us that change is something very, very important in Judaism. Now, the idea of change that means progress, like I said, is not necessarily compatible. Because progress means that there's a steady improvement of society or civilization. We don't necessarily reject that in Judaism, but we don't take it as a given. That is, it's possible that society will only get better and better and better, but we certainly recognize that society can get worse and worse and worse. And what does it depend on? Us. Us. We have a responsibility to improve our society. How so? First, fix ourselves. That is, there's this a view in the world that you have to go out and fix the world. But I always say to people who want to do that, first fix yourself. How do you know that you look at the world and you identify the problems correctly? Maybe your glasses are crooked and you see the whole world crooked. Fix yourself first. Build your morality. Build who you are correctly, and then you can project outwardly. But I think people escape fixing themselves by going to fix the outside world. We're going to go save the whales. We're going to go save hunger. Instead of what? Look at what the issues you have inside you. Look at the problems that you're dealing with in your own home. So I think that change is, on one level, Judaism agrees with, but in another you could see the no part. That we do not necessarily accept that society will always improve and get better and better and better. No. We've been in societies, we saw that a society, for example, of the time of Noah, got so bad that God decided to control Alt-Delete. You guys know what control Alt-Delete means? You don't do that anymore in a computer. Just press a button. But God said, we have to start from scratch. We're going to restart the computer. Start again. And the same thing with Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom v'Amorah. Hashem said, listen, this society went way off. There is no bringing it back. We just have to start from scratch. So societies can go way off. Then we have to drag them back. And that's something that change in Judaism could be very positive. It also could be negative. You see, like I said, yes and no. How am I on time? Still time? I could do this all night. Yeah, keep going? Okay, because the next one is time. So I wanted to make sure that I'm on time. Yeah. Time. I think that Judaism appreciates how time is precious. In the West, we see that time is very precious, very important. And what do we say in the West? Time is money. So my colleague who was in one of the Shabbatonim here, with Lativ, Rabbi Gottlieb says, time is not money, time is life. It's even more important than money, which is a very important thing. I saw the Chafetz Chaim, one of the sages before the wars, said that time is like having a bag of diamonds. And you have a hole in your bag. And every minute that passes away, a diamond falls off. And you can't get it back. Right? So you have a little bag full of diamonds. the number of minutes that you're going to live in this world. And every minute that passes by is one diamond that falls. Right? And you have to use every diamond that you can to do the most that you can out of it. So we see that in Judaism, we value time. Time is very, very important. I think in here, we see that. Just a little bit, but we also value personal relationships. We put the time and effort to develop personal relationships with other Jews, with other people, as a value, even though we know it's going to cost us time. And it's something very, very important. That as a Jewish value, we value time, but we value people more than time. It's very, very important to keep in mind. Okay. Equality and fairness. So, if you read the Torah, you know that God created how many human beings? One. Was he a male or a female?
Both.
Good. Good answer. People say male. The answer is no. He made both male and female, but he made one. Why? Why not start with 1,000? Why not start with 3? Why one? So the Medrash tells us that the reason that God created only one human being, so that no human being could say, my father was more important than your father. We are all equal. No one is more important than anybody else. So you might hear people say, oh, I have yichus. My great-great-grandfather is this, right? So you know in yichus, we say it is a 0. If you put a 1 in front of it, it's a 10. It's up to you. You become the 1. But if you don't do anything with it, what happens? 0. Has no effect. It all depends what you do. So the Torah from the beginning teaches us equality. In the West, equality is something that is often misconstrued. And I'll give you a very, very crude example. For example, we have a fence, a wooden fence. Behind the wooden fence, we have 5 kids, right? One kid is tall, one kid is short, one kid is like this, right? The different heights, right? And on the other side of the fence, there's a soccer game. Portugal against Hungary, okay? And you're not sure who's going to win, because it's 3-3. Did my homework. Just checking. So you have, and now these kids, they want to watch the game. So what do? Well, we have to treat everybody equally, right? So what do? We take one, let's say, 50 centimeter boxes, and we give every kid 50 centimeter box to stand on. Does that help?
No.
Doesn't help. Is it equal? Yes. But it's the wrong type of equality. What should be equality? Equality is you give each kid the box that he needs in order to see what they want to see. That is, I would always tell my students at the university, don't ask me to treat you equally, because that may discriminate against you. That is, I will treat each student according to his or her own need. I had a student, she took a couple of classes with me, she was blind. So she would take the tests orally. I would tell her the question and she would answer me. I said, and they said, well, why don't you give that to everybody? Well, because you don't have her issues. Right? You have to deal with the situation at hand and give everyone what I consider equal opportunity. But the opportunity is the sort of help or playing field that we're going to give to the person changes depending on that person. I think that is the way that Judaism teaches equality, is that you don't give everybody the same thing, because that might not help them. You give each person what they actually need. And we have a verse for that. Chanoch hanar al pi darko. You teach every child according to his own need. Not to, well, I have a class of 30, so guess what? Today is math, I'm going to write on the board. Well, you can't see, or you can't hear, or you didn't. Forget it. Everyone's treated equally. We are not interested in Judaism in soldiers. We're not. It's something very, very important to remember that. Now, materialism. Let's talk about materialism. Does Judaism agree with materialism? That was easy. That's like, I took the goalie out and you get a free kick. Does Judaism agree with materialism, of collecting as much stuff as possible? No. Can you give me one example of how Judaism says to do just the opposite? One mitzvah? Tzedakah. When you give money to a poor person. That is exactly the opposite. You take stuff that you have and you give it away. Yes?
Not really, because it says that
Not really.
if you do, then you will become even more richer.
Not here.
Yes, you
In Olam Haba.
yes, aser kedei te'asher.
Fine. But it's not, no, Meiser is different. Tzedakah is not Meiser. But if you give tzedakah, here comes a poor person and he says, can you give me tzedakah? And you give him tzedakah. You took money out of your own pocket and you gave it to him. So you could say, listen, I just invested money. I gave him, let's say, 5 euros, 5 shekels here, but when I get to Olam Haba, I'm going to get a buffet table. I'm going to get this to eat and that to eat, right? But that's already not materialism. That already we're talking about spirituality, right? I mean, that's the point. There's no one in the West that will tell you, listen, you give me 10% of your income and you will get rich on your own. That doesn't work. People invest money, but they want guarantees for their investment. They won't give up their money very easily. So I don't know that a Meiser is a good example. But the point of materialism in the West is that we have what we call consumerism. That is that we buy stuff and we consume material more than we need. More than we need. And the sad part, people find satisfaction from buying stuff. They buy something, they feel good. And that's addictive. Right? There are people who are shopaholics. They go and they just buy and buy and buy, and because that's what makes them feel good. Because there's nothing else inside. It's terrible. And they get into debt, and then they have big problems, and their family, there's big issues with this in the West. So, but Judaism says, no, you have to enjoy the world. You should enjoy the world, but within the boundaries of Jewish law. There is Jewish law says these are our boundaries. Within these boundaries, you should eat, you should drink, you should have a good time, you should come to vacation, you should come to a Sábáton, you should do this, you should have nice things, you should buy yourself a nice talit, nice tefillin, right? Hidur mitzvah, we say. There's a Gemara in the end of Kiddushin in Yerushalmi. It says there was a rabbi that he would always would have coins in his pocket when he would go to the market. Because if he would see a new fruit, he would buy it and eat it. Because he knew that God said, anything that you don't enjoy this world, you're going to have to stand in judgment for. Because God says, I created all these beautiful things for you to enjoy. I want you to enjoy the world, but within limits, within boundaries. So I think that Judaism doesn't reject material or physicality altogether, but it says we have boundaries, we have limits. You give tzedakah, you give meiser, you spend money on mitzvahs, but on the other hand, you can enjoy it. You can have a nice piece of steak right? Kosher glatt steak, why not? It's a very nice thing for Shabbat. Why not have a nice piece of fish, right? It's beautiful. Okay. Personal control of the environment. So that was, we said that Western people, Americans, Canadians, British, reject fate. There is no such thing as fate. That somebody wrote my life and I'm just playing it like an act. You know, like this year I'm supposed to get married, so I'm getting married. She was the person I didn't choose. She showed up, I said yes, come on, and we moved on. I got this job, that's how I look at my life. That's not true. My wife will tell you it's not true. So, does Judaism agree with this? The answer is no. Judaism believes that we have free will. There's a reward and punishment, and if there's a reward and punishment, there has to be free will. It's called bchira, chofshit. We have a choice to make. You're going to be presented with lots and lots of options, and you have a choice to make. Door A or door B. Right decision, wrong decision. There is no fate. You're not being pushed to a door. Because if you're being pushed to a door, you're not then responsible for what you do. You just, you did this. So then you say, okay, I didn't choose anything. I was just sitting. No, we have free will. And so we reject the concept of fate. We are given cards to play with. Right? Hashem says, I'm going to give you this so many years, this health, this situation, this, all these things, intelligence, height, all sorts of things, eyesight, whatever it is. These are the cards. Go play the game of life. Do the best you can with what I gave you. And in the end, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to show you where you could have ended up. That is, when you get to the other side, they will tell you, if you made it, great, they'll give you a good hand, all the angels. But if you did not, they will say, listen, we gave you this, we gave you that, we gave you, we gave you $2 million, what did you do with it? I went to Vegas and I put it up. What? We did not give you this money to go to Las Vegas. You were supposed to help, build a school, donate money, learn Torah. What did you do with the money? You went to the beach. That's not what you're supposed to do. So, we have free will. And therefore, in Judaism, we reject the concept of fate, that we have no control over what we do and what happens to us. Okay. Future-oriented, right? We said that the West is future-oriented. That is really because of Christianity. In Christianity, they believe that the best of times is yet to come. And so they all say we're waiting for the coming of their Messiah, right? So that's when it's going to be the good days. When we get to that, then we're going to be great. So as every day goes by, we get closer and closer and closer to that. Islam, on the other hand, has a different view. In Islam, they say, for example, the best of time was when Muhammad was around. So every movement that tries to reform Islam tries to say, what was it like in 7th century? And we're going to relive our life like it's 7th century. Always looking backwards. Where is Judaism in this? We could see both positions. We could see that in Judaism, the best of times was what? Har Sinai, Yetziat Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt, maybe King David. Lithuania, great. The good old days, right? When a pogrom was a pogrom, right? Chas v'shalom, God forbid. The Jewish perspective is actually, I would suggest, both ways. We do believe that we are heading towards the coming of the Mashiach, Tzidkenu, B'mehera b'yameinu, Amen. And we also are looking backward. That is, we are trying to sort of maintain both a look in the future as positive, and also looking back as what, sort of the ideal. And so we have really a bit of a tension in this. The Christians, sort of rejected the past because it didn't turn out well, right? He died. Okay? But that's the story. So, they say, well, all the blessings, all the things that he needed to accomplish, he will accomplish then. But we said we already accomplished. We had first Beis HaMikdash, we had second Beis HaMikdash. Okay, they were destroyed by our sins, but those Beis HaMikdash existed for over 800 years in this world. That the Jewish people, we had our own kingdom, we had our own kings, we had all these things. So we have a very, very rich history to look back to and to be proud of. But on the other hand, we could also look at the future and say, we know what the future is going to be like. What? It's going to be going back to King David, right? The Mashiach will come, we'll have a temple, we have a kingdom. What? Exactly, right. So in Pirkei Avot it says, know where you came from and where you're going. Right? That's the Jewish perspective. Very good. Last one and we'll stop. We'll open it up for argument, or what I call questions. So, action and work oriented. That is, do something. You got to do something. Is that a Jewish value? Is that how Judaism looks at life? That we have to keep busy, we have to keep doing, and that it's better to do than to sit and do nothing? It's not so simple. I went back and forth on this, and it might be, a separate class in the future. It's not so cut and dry. Because Judaism does value the appropriate action to every situation. There is the right action in every situation. So in every situation there is something you should do, and lots of things you shouldn't do. Correct? Right? If your wife comes home and she says, I had a bad day, you don't say to her, yeah, where's my dinner? They don't say that. Unless you can run really fast. Right? There's certain things you know not to do, right? Your child comes home and he's like, I got an A, I got a 96 on the test. You don't say, why didn't you get 98? Oh, great, you got 96. There's certain things you should do and certain things you shouldn't do. But Judaism does say that if you don't know what the correct action is, shev ve'al taseh, don't do it. Don't do anything. That is, we also value the understanding that there are some situations where we're not sure, we have a suffix, we don't know what to do. Don't do anything. Sit. Doing something is not better than doing nothing. Whereas in Western culture, at least in America, it says, do something! Right? And you see in the movies and the slapstick, they run around and they get hot water and this one falls. As long as they're doing something, it's good. No. It's not about doing something. It's doing the right thing. If you know what to do, what the right thing is, then do it. If you don't know what the right thing is, you ask her out. If you don't know what the right thing is and you don't, then don't do anything. Or you could always, in a certain situation, ask the person, how can I help you? People are shocked when you say to them, why don't you just suggest something? No, just ask the person, what do you want? When my wife was giving birth, they give you all these lists, go get this, go get this, go get this, pickles with ice cream, I just asked her, what do you want? She said, just leave me alone. Okay, fine, I'll leave you alone. I won't ask anything, I'll just, I'll wait over here in the corner. She's going to watch this, I get in trouble. What are you going to do with this? Okay. So, to summarize, we looked at least 10 different categories of values. Western values, and then we saw whether they compare with Jewish values or not. What we saw is that it really is a yes and no answer. I didn't lie when I gave you the first answer. It is a yes and no. And the question now, which is what I want to hear from you, how do you live a Jewish life in a Western society? Do you find it's going to be a greater challenge? Or is essentially it's a good fit, we just have to pay attention to a few things? Or do we have to simply reject one or the other? This is what I want to hear from you. Yeah?
I think that is a source of pride that you mentioned in the beginning, that if you look at Western culture and defining Western culture, it's a problem in and of itself, and Jewish culture, opposite, you have the sources. So I think
Right.
this is source of proud. We know what to do because it's written, and we do it. What you value, it's like sort of random.
Okay, good. That's a very good opinion. I'm happy with that. Everybody have similar opinion, different opinions? Nobody? You can speak in Hungarian too. You can speak to yourselves now. You don't have to speak it to me. They'll translate to me.
I just wanted to reflect on that, even though we can say that all is determined and written, and we know, I don't think it's so simple. That you don't get
Nothing is
this.
simple. In an hour
No,
to
it is.
solve the universe's problems we're not going to be able to solve. But the question is to raise the question and to think about the two sort of baskets. That in one basket we have Western values, and then another basket we have Jewish values. How do I, as a person who lives in both worlds, how do I decide what to do? Do I have to always feel alienated or different? Or do I feel at home in Western culture? How do I relate to those values? Do I accept them? Do I reject them? Or what I wanted to suggest, which is sort of my answer, this is why I told you where I came from and how I sort of grew up, is that I don't think you need to reject Western value. You just have to pay attention to what they actually say. And see, some aspects fit with Jewish culture very nicely, some things no. And the ones that don't fit, we can say, no thank you, up to here, wait outside. And other things, there's no problem, you can bring in and be, I'm not sure, that there's a problem with it. And I think that approach, at least for me, worked and made it very healthy. Because if you reject one or the other, you have, in a sense, you lost the beauty of Judaism. And we still live in a Western society. You can't ignore that. We're not going to move and live on a rock, with no phone, no internet, nothing. Okay, maybe on Shabbat. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.